is Professor Haggai Ben Shammai, which hardly needs to be introduced. However, I will say several things about his academic activity. Professor Ben Shammai is Professor Emeritus of Arabic Language and Literature at the Hebrew University. He was the President of the Society for Judeo-Arabic Studies, the Director of Ben Tzvi Institute for the Study of Jewish Communities in the East, was the academic co-director of the Friedberg Genizah project. His scholarly interests are Judeo-Arabic Bible exegesis and philosophy, history of Jewish communities in Islamic countries. He published numerous articles and chapters in book on these areas. His latest publication is a Leaders Project, Studies in the Philosophical and Exegetical Works of Saadia Gaon, published in the Yale Institute.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, thanks to Dr. Friedberg, the Friedberg Charitable Foundation, and all those involved in the organization of the interesting workshop, for which I have been privileged to take part. I also thank Gregor Schwab for providing us with a draft of an edition of the original Judeo-Arabic text of Yeshua Ben-Yehuda's introduction to his book on forbidden marriages. Introductions in general are very often independent monographs. And this introduction is exactly of this type. Until now, this text was available only in an almost completely unintelligible Hebrew translation. The translator, Yaakov Ben Shimon, may have tried to do his best, but did not have the innovative drive and linguistic gift of, for instance, the family Ibn. And so we have a poor experiment of forging a scientific vocabulary with biblical meaning. I would like also to comment on the title of this workshop: Theologians in the Jewish Robe, Relations between Theology and Law in the Judeo-Arabic milieu. In the context of this milieu, what or who are the theologians, with or without a capital T? These are thinkers who, in face of an expanding influence of Greco-Arab philosophy, were trying to establish a rationalist basis for their jubilationist religion. In this way, they hope to defend their faith against the danger of Greco-Arabic philosophy. It was considered to be a real danger or threat on their vision of monotheism. In order to achieve this goal, they adopted many principles and tools and constructed a system which is known as Kalam, and in English and other European languages, theology. This system has been recognized as part of Islamic or Arabic philosophy. The latter definition covers, of course, also Judeo-Arabic Kalam. As it happens, theologians would or could wear various robes. In addition to the robes of jurists, one can mention notably the robes of Bible exegetes. The reason why scholars tend to see a special relationship between rationalist theologians and jurists may be that both groups uphold lists of principles, usul, so much so that the two groups have come to be called by the aberrant nickname Al-Usuliyan, which is a kind of a linguistic abnormal creation. But as Daniel G. Murray has already noted in his article on Usul al-Din in the Encyclopedia of Islam, in the second edition, the two sets of principles are very different from each other. While the Usul al-Din are principles or articles of faith, The usul al-fiqh are principal sources from which or by which the laws are known or derived. This is a methodological list, and the exegetes have their lists. In medieval Arabic-speaking countries, theology was the hit, the hot thing. One could support it or oppose it. Nobody could ignore it. Islam and Judaism shared an important shift from praxis as criterion of belonging to the faith to dogma. What mattered was not only what one acts, but also what one believes. It is quite plausible that the model for this shift was Christianity. In rabbinic Judaism and in nascent Islam, there are sanctions only against members of the faith who did not observe commandments or who transgressed prohibitions, not against those who did not profess certain articles of faith. Articles of faith in Islam and Judaism are the invention of rationalist theologians. In Islam, this term applies to the Mu'tazila, especially, and also to Ash'arites, yes, also to Ash'arites. In Judaism, it may include followers of Kalam, which means Mu'tazili Kalam, as well as others like Maimonides. I would like to mention here an experience which I had years ago, which I think is relevant to the present workshop. In the year 1993-94, I was a fellow with the Center for, that would become now the Center for Advanced Judaic Studies at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. The theme of the group of fellows for that year was law and spirituality. At the conclusion of the year was a conference with Professor Yaakov Katz, a renowned historian of Jewish social and cultural history, as the keynote speaker. The presentation of the fellows had to relate to his lecture, which was on philosophy and halakha, which aimed at showing that the halachic discourse in medieval Ashkenaz and in reference to philosophy. At the end of the conference, a visitor who attended all the lectures approached me and said that two presentations stood out as exceptions in the conference. My presentation was one of the two, which showed the diametrically opposed situation in Arabic-speaking countries in the Middle Ages, namely a positive relationship between philosophy, in the broadest sense, including theology, including Kalam, of course, and religious matters, jurisprudence, or articles of faith. Yeshua ben Yehuda is an excellent example of a thinker and author who combined in his works all these disciplines: theology, jurisprudence, and exegesis. He may have authored some liturgical poems as well. Even when one of his works is nominally meant to belong to a specific or to one specific genre, it usually contains elements from others. The work under discussion is an instructive example. The introduction serves as a platform for the discussion of the theoretical aspects of the laws of forbidden marriages, which were subject to heated debates. The theoretical aspects are mainly epistemological, that is, how does one attain true, correct knowledge or understanding of the meaning of the biblical text of the commandments, and mainly prohibitions, or at least a sound opinion about that meaning. We shall see later what sound opinion means. A typical example of almost blatant Mu'tazilism in Yeshua's insistence on an equal epistemological status in the context of the discussion of as to whether the indicators of a sound opinion, that he called it Arabic zan, regarding a rational commandment are equal to those regarding a revealed commandment. Perhaps the most important theological philosophical question which Yeshua discusses here is whether language is a man-made convention, the result of divine instruction or inspiration, or, is it a man-made convention or the result of divine instruction or inspiration, which is called in Arabic tawqif or talqeen, which means an action of instruction or of teaching. It is interesting to note that the translator or the copyist of traditions of Yeshua's work into Hebrew translates these terms, that is tawqif and talqeen, instruction or teaching, by two letters, Mem Dalet apostrophe, which means Hashem, which means from God. So we have two kinds of such ways to understand, of judgment of the language of the commandments. It is either human convention or a result, as I said, of divine inspiration or revelation. It may be argued that Yeshua follows in this respect in Abdel Jabbar. It is true that the question was on the table of the Mu'tazila. Exactly in Abdel Jabbar's discussion of the topics of Wada, which is the term for the human convention, human creation of the convention of the language, we find the chapter entitled بصحة كون بعض اللغات توقيفا وأن الجميع لا يصح فيه ذلك, which means on the soundness of the proposition that some languages came into being by revelation, but such a proposition is not sound with respect to all. This reflects the typical Mu'tazili compromise. Revelation is the starting point of languages, which are then developed and extended by humans. Yeshua could have, of course, known or learned of such a compromise from Abdel Jabbar's works. But he could also have heard it in the Jerusalem Karaite school when reading, for example, Kirkisani's commentary on Genesis 11:1. Kirkisani, a very famous jurist and philosopher and exegete who lived in the was active in the first third of the 10th century, quite early, a contemporary of Sadagon. The verse said, everyone on earth had the same language. Vayikol haaretz safar echad. And here you have Kirkisani's comment on this text. You have the Judeo-Arabic text from Kirkisani's commentary from the Genizah of St. Petersburg, and also the English translation. One of our arguments by which we establish prophethood is the subject of language, namely, everybody who speaks in whatever language, it is impossible that this results from his own initiative or invention or creation. So the idea is that the initial creation of a language must be by divine instruction. And those, on this basis, and this is actually more or less what Abdel Jabbar also says in this chapter. The beginning, I mean, and why is it so?
But it contradicts Yeshua. It contradicts Yeshua. Because according to Yeshua, al-Muwad al-Ula can only be man-made.
Maybe we'll wait with
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Kirkisan is explanation or the cause that he gives to this is, how many? 5 minutes. Is that if we assume that people, that language is man-made, this would bring us to a kind of ad infinitum chain of beginnings. So we would have got no the impossibility of the infinite. The subject of Tawqif and Talqin is well known in Karaite literature and is probably part of the Mu'tazili component of this literature. Gregor discussed it in the context of Usul al-Fiqh, the principles of jurisprudence. An interesting question is whether it is the Mu'tazili pinning, whether the Mu'tazili pinning are present also in the context of Karaite for all fiqh, the positive details of law. And I can give you one very interesting example. The Arab term tawallud literally means being born, is translated generated effects. Remke Cook, who wrote the article Tawallud in the Encyclopedia of Islam, gave the definition cause and effect without intermediate point of volition. The translation very much reflects the problems or divergence of views related to the subject in Islamic theology. A definition like kaun min tilka nafsihi, that is, being or coming into being by itself, also reflects the problematic of the issue. It may seem that it relates only to a kind of metaphysical level, to the question of coming into being, of existence, which may, of course, be related to questions of creation and also to the question of permanent divine involvement in every daily occurrence or action. If this is so, it may be related to the question of determinism and free will of humans. In other words, it may be related to the question of personal responsibility of humans for their actions. Now, if this issue is integrated into the atomistic worldview of Kalam, it becomes still more complicated. According, any span of time or space cannot be divided into an infinite number of particles, as has been argued on the authority of Aristotle. It may be divided only into a number of particles which can be counted. Suppose somebody shoots an arrow at a target, which happens to be a human being. As a result, the person hit by the arrow dies. The problem that the theologians face now is whether the archer is responsible for the death of the hit person or not. If the distance between the archer and his target can be divided into a given number of particles, and if we maintain the principle that there is no causal tie between the movement of the arrow through the first particle and its movement through the other particles, the archer is theoretically responsible only for the first particle, while the hit person was still alive. Several groups, yes, I'm going to finish in approximately 1 minute. Several groups or individuals took various positions on the question. So far, the question as presented by theologians still looks like theoretical. It would not be considered in such terms by an Islamic court dealing with such a criminal case. I'm quite sure that some of you will be surprised when hearing where the Karaites Jews took it. It is well known that the Karaites had been reputed for sitting in the dark after sunset on Friday that is after the beginning of Shabbat, and for eating cold food through the entire 25 hours of Shabbat. It is not clear when exactly what was this prohibition started and on what basis. It is quite clear. Biblical proof text in Exodus 35:5. You shall kindle no fire throughout your habitations upon the Sabbath day. It is beyond doubt that at the latest, by the time of Kirgisani, whom I mentioned a few minutes ago, in the 930s, the prohibition to maintain burning fire for light or for warming food was based on the principle of tawallud, the theological principle of responsibility for generated effects. Namely, that anybody who maintains a burning fire which had been lit before Shabbat is considered as one who keeps lighting the fire every minute of its burning. This is an interesting case of applying a philosophical, ethical principle to a positive, very practical detail of ritual law. Thank you.